the biggest draft pick was Ben Johnson, essentially, for this team. You had to get the right coach for what this team needs, for what your potential star, cornerstone of franchise at quarterback needs. So that's the right move to make first and foremost.
Speaking of screwing up, let's get to the Bears. Not that they screwed up this time, but they have the last 7 years.
History.
It's a good save there.
Yeah. So what do you make of what they've done this entire offseason? Is like you do Bears games nationally, you'll do Bears games in the preseason. You're a Bears fan.
Sure, grew up as one.
So what do you think they've done here with the draft, with hiring Ben Johnson, free agency?
I liked it. I think, I like that this has been a process, and at the very least, it feels like it's been on a linear track since Ryan Poles took over, right? It feels like, all right, there's at least a trajectory here. I'm not saying there haven't been misses. Obviously, like you can say Matt Eberflus was a miss if you want to. I wouldn't say that. I think that was the coach you needed to have at that time while you're making a transition from Matt Nagy. I have no problem with the hiring. Didn't work out great. There have been draft picks that haven't worked out. See Velus-Jones, probably one of your bigger misses to have an early round draft pick not come to fruition the way Velus struggled these last couple of years. But he's had a lot of hits, and for the most part, when you stack up some hits, you have an upward trajectory. And now you're getting into a point where you have to make big moves. Big swings have to be taken. So the head coaching, the biggest draft pick was Ben Johnson, essentially, for this team. You had to get the right coach for what this team needs, for what your potential star, cornerstone of franchise at quarterback needs. So that's the right move to make first and foremost. I've always had a great relationship with Ben since he's taken over the play calling duties in Detroit. Always walked away impressed with a good conversation. Did start to notice a little bit of a change this past year because he'd gone through the head coaching interview process. So he was a little more thoughtful about certain aspects of the game. And not that he wasn't before, but just you could tell this guy's been through the ringer now a little bit. He started to add some years onto his resume and to the high level of success he has had in Detroit. So you start to get the sense, all right, well, he's setting himself up to be in this position. He wants to do it right. So he's thoughtful about it, which I respect. And then free agency, you attack the offensive line, which is the biggest thing. I mean, the everything else feels good. Even not having a true second pass rusher behind Montez Sweat just yet, maybe a guy that hasn't emerged yet. You still feel like you have the pieces in place and you have set yourself up to make the right moves. Until you get the offensive line fixed, none of it is going to matter. So to get the guys that they got, I'm a big Jonah Jackson fan. I think the versatility he showed in multiple spots. I love Drew Dahlman. I thought he was one of the better centers. I don't think people realize how good Atlanta's offensive line had been for like 2 or 3 years. They had a championship level offensive line.
Oh, they had Matthews, they had Lindstrom, they had
Caleb McGarry.
Yeah.
Like they had a terrible quarterback,
Right.
a terrible quarterback situation. And Cousins, while he elevated it, that's not the guy that is going to get you to the promised land. So now you start to see the disintegration of that line because guys want to go get paid, they want to get some security. So Dahlman, I think, is a great pickup. I'm curious to see how some of these picks will work out. The 2 offensive tackles that they picked up. Question marks, sure, but you got one in the second round. What was the kid out of BC, if I'm not mistaken?
Trapillo.
Ozzie Trapillo.
I'll get it right one day.
Well, by August, right?
Yeah.
We'll get it right by training camp. We'll be all right. But I like the picks that they made. I think they address certain needs on the offensive line. I still feel like the pass rush is going to be an issue. The premium positions in the NFL are quarterback and pass rusher, right? You feel like you got the quarterback, you got to solve pass rush, and you got to protect the quarterback. So the steps are being taken. I hate that it's another offseason of hype because that's what I'm going to be excited in August. When we come on for whatever the first preseason game is, we're going to be excited, and I'm going to be caught up a little bit in the whirlwind that took place over the course of the spring and summer. But I want it so badly to work out finally, and I'm hoping that these are the right moves to make. And maybe by the end of October, before the trade deadline comes around, maybe you've made a move to get a legit second pass rusher that you're willing to pay for beyond whatever the remainder of their contract
just
is.
in general terms, I've got this expectation and optimism that there will be a more professional approach on so many fronts.
I think so.
I think Ben brings a different, feeling. And all we heard last year, Adam, was we're not being held accountable. We weren't coached hard enough. I think all that nonsense goes out the window with this group. Eric Bieniemy is not going to suffer foolishness lightly inside the running back room. Same for Antoine Randall. I don't think Dennis Allen is going to stand for that stuff, and I don't think Ben Johnson is going to stand for that. I guess the question would be is when you go around the NFL and you call different games at different places, and not to point the finger at anyone specifically, did other teams give you a better feel or vibe than when you were preparing for this Bears team that had all of that dysfunction that was going on?
I think it went back a little bit to when Justin Fields was the quarterback. It felt a little bit sloppy at times, even to how he discussed things in a press conference versus how we perceive Caleb Williams a little bit. There still has been a lack of polish at times. And I'm not blaming any one
With
person
the whole
or
organization.
It's the whole organization. Yeah. So I think that the feeling of getting somebody like Ben Johnson in does clean things up a little bit. Dennis Allen, for all the struggles he may have had as a head coach, is a hell of a defensive coordinator. That guy really knew how to run a defense, and I thought did it well with some really high-quality players in New Orleans for a good chunk of time. Just some guys, it doesn't work out, whether it's the roster or whatever, or maybe they're not cut out to be the CEO in the NFL. The job of head coach is such that of a CEO, and the really good ones still want to be the play caller, the Andy Reids of the world, the Siriannis of the world, et cetera.
He could be Vic Fangio.
He could. That's fine, and there's nothing wrong with that. The guy just won a Super Bowl, right? Yeah. So like being in your lane is a good thing. I think Matt Eberflus was a little bit of that, like a guy who's probably a really good, solid defensive coordinator and was in Indianapolis. Just maybe the role didn't suit him the way that it would to somebody like Ben Johnson, who I think as time has gone on, I felt, all right, because of his thoughtfulness, what we were just talking about in these meetings, the way he kind of approaches the offensive aspect of the NFL, understanding the modern elements of it while still keeping, I think, what he learned from Dan Campbell, kind of an old school mentality of we have to build from the inside, no block, no rock for the guys on the outside. I think these are all good philosophies to come in with for an offensive team, a team that expects to be really good offensively. And I think there is a little bit more urgency, which leads to people being on their toes a little bit more. And I do think that has helped the organization kind of refocus its energies. I think Ryan Poles probably had a couple of moments where, they felt like they were doing all the right things and there was no stopping them. And then you get a wake-up call. You get a pretty big reality check this past season, in the second half in particular. So the life in this league does that to you. I'd like to chalk it up, like we were just talking about. You can only really evaluate things, 5-10 years down the line. I'd like to believe 5 years from now, we'll look at Ryan Poles and go, man, he was a little in over his head when he first started this job. But, man, he recovered really nicely, huh? They've really done a good job of steering the ship back. I think all the elements are there, both resource-wise and personnel-wise, both front office and roster. I think all the elements are there to try to do this the right way. So don't screw it up. You have a great landing spot for this organization to start moving in the right direction.
Speaking of that, Ryan Poles joins Cap and Jay Hood tomorrow. What time is that interview tomorrow, guys?
8 a.m.
8 a.m. for Ryan Poles, so don't miss that. When we come back, one more. Is that cool?
Absolutely.
All right, we're holding Adam Amin.
No, not at all. I don't need to blink twice or anything.
Yeah,
I'm happy to be with you guys.
So coming up next, I want to ask you if the Cubs have not one but two MVP candidates.